Hi everyone. Um, I just wanted a quick note out about a case that I've known about for quite a while. A good friend of mine, an American pilot who had been working in the UAE. He he was made redundant ultimately, but his employer tricked him into resigning. Essentially, he was told, "Oh, just submit a resignation letter. That just makes the paperwork go through faster, but it doesn't change anything." So he did that, but then they claimed that he owed them $50,000 worth, US dollars worth of compensation that they'd given him for his family, his schooling, his villa, everything that was provided to an airline captain's usual wages. So they asked for $50,000, even though actually he was owed $30,000, and they wouldn't settle anything. They wouldn't agree anything with him. He tried to resolve it, but what they did is they kept his passport, which meant that he was unable to work. Now, he'd started training in Abu Dhabi for a different job with someone else, one of the Royal Airlines actually, and he'd started training with that, and he could have within a couple of months switched over to a full package, and they were offering a very good package. But he couldn't because his passport had been confiscated by his former employer, and they weren't ever going to give it back. So this situation led to him defaulting on some credit card debts that he had, that he'd accrued, that he expected to be able to pay based on his, captain's wages, and that ultimately led to him being put in prison for several months. 4 months, I think, he spent in prison over this credit card debt. But still his passport was confiscated. So it was this endless cycle. There you have a highly skilled individual who could usually command anything from, $10,000 to $40,000 a month, unable to work. So, and going into debt for something that he should normally be able to pay. So that's just a little warning out there that, we get a lot of people coming to us, a lot of airline captains who have been essentially abused by their employers. They're treated just so poorly in the UAE, and they run into all sorts of problems. They're either financially related or they're related to an employer-employee dispute, and there doesn't seem to be any care whatsoever for the reputation of that airline amongst the industry professionals. It's just they bring in the pilots, they bring in the cabin crew, they get what they can out of them for a few months, and then they have no qualms whatsoever about entirely abusing the system like they did with this one, to the point where they owe him $30,000 and they're claiming that he owes them $50,000. I mean, it's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous, and very dangerous to work for a captain in the Middle East, actually. So many of them have run into troubles. I've had people, several pilots listed on Interpol. I've had, they've been arrested in Spain, other countries, because of their employment in the Middle East. So it's really disturbing. And who was this? We're going to do a little name and shame. So this was Air Arabia, actually. Most of the airlines we've seen have terrible treatment of staff, and including Emirates as well, especially of cabin crew. Etihad, it's the way that they try to end contracts that usually results in the problem. So they have someone, everything's going along swimmingly, and they want to make someone redundant, and they want to get as much as they possibly can when they do make them redundant, rather than thanking them for their service and paying them what they're owed. They make false allegations, they hold their passport and won't give it back until that person agrees to sign a document that they don't owe any money. There's all sorts of scams that are going on, and it's disturbing. So staff who go there should not count on a final payment. They almost could, they have to consider that their passport could be confiscated if they don't agree to whatever their employer is demanding. And if they take it to court, it's going to be a lengthy and costly procedure, so they probably won't want to go through that. And they could actually end up facing real problems if they have any debt whatsoever, because they could be stuck in a situation where they can't work, they can't earn, and therefore they can't pay their obligations, and that's going to land them in prison, like it did with this friend of mine. So fortunately, he managed to get out, and he's back in America now. But this, this treatment of airline staff, I think, really needs to be a lot more exposed. I know all the pilots talk about it themselves, but there's not much in the media. There's not that much warning to new staff, and especially now at the moment, with coronavirus and all of the layoffs happening. So the airlines are going to feel in a very, very powerful position. There's going to be a lot more demand for jobs than there are jobs. So something to take care of, and just be careful when you're offered this amazing package to come and work in the Middle East and be stationed there, that you could be facing this kind of situation in the end. You could be placed on Interpol, you could be put in debtor's prison, you could have a final paycheck not remitted to you. So there's all sorts of issues. Hopefully we'll take some steps to make some of these airlines accountable for this sort of behaviour. So I'm looking into this case at the moment to see whether we can take any action against them, because their behaviour is what actually led to his incarceration, and obviously that's going to cause him to have had several years of lost income, that sort of thing. So once we make them legally accountable, I think, and they're kind of immune in the UAE. I mean, once someone's in that situation, it's really difficult for them to achieve civil justice there. But if we can have them accountable outside of the UAE, I think that's when they're going to start taking their roles seriously and start, well, we have to force them to act ethically, essentially. So thank you. Yes, you like my red top, thank you. Hi, Alejandra. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so, I mean, especially now as well, I've touched on this before, we're just getting so many calls from airline staff and pilots and everything over this situation. And, I mean, they're often the most concerned of all people, because their income really relies on their freedom to travel. And with the UAE, Qatar and other Middle Eastern countries abusing the Interpol database, it's very worrying that they could be listed there. For example, if they have an employment dispute, then that can be escalated by the employer to take sort of fake allegations against them for breach of trust or something similar to that, to put pressure on them to stop any litigation that they have against their employer. And that's another mechanism that's open to abuse and is abused and can lead to someone not being able to travel. And I mean, we've just had some cabin crew arrested in Italy, and of course I've had pilots arrested in the past over these kind of things. So it's something that the airlines know is available to them, that if you don't agree to their terms, they can put you on Interpol. And that just puts you in such a powerless position. It can really affect your income later on. Of course, it's never good to have a conviction in absentia, even though it's not true, even though you didn't commit a crime. If you have that conviction in absentia, that's going to affect, again, your ability to travel, because when you fill out the little form, you're applying for a visa to go to a country, and they ask if you've ever been convicted of a crime. Well, then you have to say yes. So again, that's something that on a political level we need to look at. Should we actually be taking convictions seriously from the Middle East? Should America be saying, have you ever been convicted of a crime in a real country with a real legal system? Or should they be saying, have you ever been convicted of a crime in the UAE? Is that really a crime that we should be taking seriously when it comes to admission to our country? You know, unless it's a very obviously violent crime. But anyway, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll keep you updated on this one because I want to see where it goes. And I'll keep you updated on the extradition from Greece to Qatar, which I just spoke about earlier. And have a great day, everyone.